Piece number 2, I'm going to talk about the 4 phases of buying a home. And I'm going to give you a couple of elements to kind of think about here. And we're going to give you some actual actions to take in each of these phases. So the first thing I want you to think about is that from a consumer standpoint, right? The buyer, not you, but from their standpoint, all they really care about, all they're thinking about is how do I get the home that I want for the price I can afford? That's what they care about. That's why they're concerned about interest rates. That's why they're not sure if they should work with you or someone else. That's why they don't want to like restrict their options and sign an agreement. That's why they're not sure if they should talk to a lender yet, because they don't know enough about the process, but all they care about is getting to the end destination, right? So if that's their reality and they're operating off of that, they will not look for most of them. They're not going to look for like, what are the right steps or what's my agent going to be doing? They're just going to be caring about like when they think they can get the house they want for the right amount of money. So in order to be their guide, you've got to understand that there's some distinct phases that you need to move them through. And the phases don't have like a specific time limit on it. They're different for every single person. But what happens if you look at this is throughout those phases, you're going to be moving them over from that right side of your board to that left side. They're going to move from being like a customer and someone that you are helping, could be helping, to a client and someone that you are actually helping buy a home. So 4 phases of the process. Phase 1, I call the research phase. Now, every person who's considering buying a home is already in this phase. There are people out there today in your database that you're not talking to that are searching on Zillow. They're just researching because everybody who has that dream of buying a home starts by researching online. I don't remember the data anymore, but it used to be like 95, 96% of people start their home buying journey by searching online before they ever talk to a real estate agent. So they're already researching. Now, what they're probably not researching, and maybe some of them are, but they're probably not figuring out all the money pieces. They're probably not figuring out what else is around that home. They're probably not figuring out yet which agent to select. So there's actually a lot more that goes into that research phase that they don't know, but remember what they're fixated on. What house? Can I get my house for the price I want? Can I get my house for the price I want? And if you look at, I encourage you guys to go do this. This is an act, right? Go look at like a Zillow webpage these days and see what it looks like from a buyer's perspective. All they're trying to get that buyer to do is become a lead for a loan company or click on the button to talk to an agent, which is also a lead for Zillow, right? So all Zillow wants is for that consumer to become a lead, but they're giving them the things that people click on. So guess what? You're a consumer, you're scrolling through, you see a house you like, you're going to click a button that says connect me with an agent. So Zillow's telling you the answers, which is they need to be connected with you in this phase. So everyone in your database that's researching, you need to be talking to because there's something you could do for them. The next one is the shopping phase. Shopping phase is like for all of you, when you actually move beyond browsing on the web and you go to houses. Shopping phase means I'm going to houses. Now, guess what? There are some agents in your database right now that are actively going to open houses. They're going anywhere they can go without an agent to see houses. They are shopping. They're actively out there. Also, there are some people that would be shopping right now if you helped them understand how to get into that home that they want. They'd be out there looking at houses if they just knew, what down payment do I need? What am I qualified for? What does it mean to work with an agent? Because a lot of buyers, even if they've worked with an agent before, are super inexperienced because the average first-time buyer didn't have a great first-time agent. So if this is their second or their third time, they're not educated. They're not informed. They have not been guided or led through this process. The third phase, this is a real distinct phase, very different than shopping. The third phase is actually buying. People are not buying a house until they've made their first offer. That's my experience, Traci. Until they've made their first offer, they're not actually serious. They're just window shopping. People would call it tire kicking. They're just out there browsing. There's something like physiological, mental, and real that happens from them submitting their first offer. It breaks the ice. It's a process that's super scary and foreign to them that they've finally done. And now you know, as their agent, that they're ready, that they're seriously ready to buy. And when you start making offers is when you start to gain the most experience as an agent. Until then, research and shopping, I can't say that's passive because you're actively involved, but a lot of it's kind of like on them. You get to start learning how it works when you start writing offers, negotiating offers, talking to agents, actually walking people through contracts to close, which is that fourth phase. So once you have an accepted offer, now you move it into phase 4. And one of the classic mistakes that a lot of people make in working with buyers is they think they have to have full knowledge of all these 4 pieces before they can do any of these pieces. It's actually untrue. There are actions that you can take in every phase, no matter your experience level, no matter your knowledge, and then you can prepare for the actions in the next phase. I can't say it's fun that way. It's going to be a little stressful for some of you, but it is kind of how it works. You actually can't know what you don't know until you get into these pieces. You can maybe have an idea, you can study a little, you can read a little, which I encourage, but you can't really know. So I put acronyms on here on purpose and little abbreviations because I want you to write these down. And if you've written them down on your paper, now you have something you have to go actually do. You got to change the way you think or act on something or learn something. So again, one of the biggest misconceptions I hear all the time is that, well, they're thinking about buying. They're not ready. So there's nothing I can do. That's the research phase. It could last like 3 years for some people. They don't know anything about buying a home and they're hoping they can save enough money and they're hoping that their credit will get better and they're hoping, right? But you can be helping them that entire time, adding value 3 times a year, 4 times a year. There's stuff you can be doing always during that phase. Or if somebody's really capable and able to buy a home, you can expedite the research phase by doing the right things. So in this little table, you see, I kind of called out the phase, and then I called out who's responsible for doing what, and then what do we do together. So there's much more than this, but I'm going to give you what you should be doing at a minimum, action-wise, in each of these phases. So when someone is researching, trying to figure out what it takes to buy a home, and you're talking to them, you should become an MLS expert. You should know everything that's on the market in and around their areas of curiosity. Even sometimes if they don't know where they're searching, you need to start figuring out, well, where are their homes available that I can maybe take them out to an open house and move them to the shopping phase? Where are their homes available that I could talk to them about to get a feel for what they actually do like? What areas can I show them that are probably in their price range based on what I know about them? So if you're not an MLS expert in this phase, then you're not any more helpful than just like them searching on Zillow. And that's at a minimum. There's much more you can be doing in the research phase. For example, what the buyer should be doing. They should be getting pre-qualified or attempting to get pre-qualified in the research phase. So the thing that you can be doing in addition to MLS is, first off, recommending, hey, have you talked to a mortgage lender? Because if you haven't, you have no idea what you qualify for. There are down payment assistance programs. There are different types of home loans. There are plans that you can get on to be ready way sooner than you thought. There are things you might need to do with your tax returns. There are things you might need to do with your employer. There's a lot of money stuff that a buyer can be learning about, preparing for, and acting on during this research phase. And what's better than sending them to do it alone is you doing it with them. So you start to build a lot of trust, rapport, and relationship when you not only refer them to that lender, but you talk to lenders. When you talk to their lender, when you get really knowledgeable and informed about what's going on in their financial situation. Now, guess what? Together, what you absolutely must do, must have, must attend is a buyer consultation during this research phase. A buyer consultation. If you've ever run into a situation where people are having a hard time making you their agent, they're like, yeah, I still want to work with other agents, or, you know, I just want to go see some homes this weekend, and then they don't talk to you again for like a month. It's because you haven't sat down to have a consultation. You haven't established with them that you're a professional service provider, that you have a level of service that you provide clients versus customers. You haven't laid out that you're the leader or the guide in this process. And the research phase is the ideal time to do that. And oftentimes what you'll find is that people would be ready to move to the shopping or buying phase if you just blocked off some time and sat down and explained it to them. They'd be like, oh, that's why I need to talk to a lender? Yeah, I haven't done that because my dad told me I need 20% down. You don't. Let me get you to a mortgage professional that can tell you about the 3.5% down. Do you already have 7,000 saved? Oh my gosh, we have 13,000 saved. We just thought we had to save 30,000. So we hadn't talked to anybody. That's why you sit down for a consultation. Have you been inside any of those homes in that area that you've been driving past every day on your way home from work? No, we haven't. We were afraid somebody might try and sell us something. We're too nervous. I'll take you there next weekend. Let's schedule a time. But first, let's sit down and talk this through. So research phase, ideal time for a buyer consultation. Absolutely, they should be talking to lenders and figuring out their money. Bonus if you help them. And at a minimum, you should become an MLS expert. Because when you start talking about homes and prices and what they get, naturally, they're going to start asking about money and lenders, and all this stuff feeds each other. So that's your research phase. So what I want you to start thinking about when you leave here today is how many people do I actually have in my database that are sitting out there researching and I'm not guiding them? I'm leaving a huge opportunity on the table. Now, once you've done these things, what is absolutely going to happen is you're going to move them to the shopping phase. They're going to say, you know what? Thanks for this professional consultation, Sam. This was fantastic. I am going to talk to that lender. I'm really ready to start looking at houses. I want to go look at some. Here's what I'm qualified for. Ideally, they're going to have a pre-qualification letter, but even if not yet, they need to get a little more excited to take a step. Cool. I'll follow up. That's what FU stands for. So the entire shopping phase, you are proactively following. You don't let them just browse and get back to you. That's not how it works. They're going to click on Zillow and they're going to go to another agent. That's how it works. So you're going to be proactively following up once they're in the shopping phase. And your goal is to get them pre-qualified first and foremost and get that pre-qualification letter. They're really ready to shop if they have a letter in hand that says from a lender, I can afford this much and I know what my payment would be and understand down payments. Now you're really ready to actively take them on tours, which is what you do together. Now notice I didn't say showings. Everybody says showings. That is not the word I like to use. A tour, how many of you have ever been on a tour of something super awesome? You toured a museum, you toured a stadium, you toured a city, you toured a neighborhood. That's fun, exciting, and awesome. And guess what? People make decisions emotionally, and then they rationalize using logic. So if you don't create emotional experiences, people don't buy anything with you. But when you do, they do. So I call them tours because if you think of them as an experience every time you go out, if you intentionally craft how they're going to feel upon arrival, how they're going to feel when they leave, what you're going to do while they're there, it's way different than just opening doors. There are now companies, Traci, trying to just automate door opening. They're putting lock boxes on the doors where a consumer can go in themselves. They're sending out a showing agent from Redfin or whatever that's not a pro like you are, that's just opening doors. So tours are very different. They're a crafted experience where you have a plan, where you have, again, an intentional feel that you're giving them. That's what you can be doing. If you guys want to go in more in depth in the tours, I think that would be a bonus session that I'd be glad to do. If you guys let me know after, I'll tell you what a great tour of homes looks like. And I'll give you a little sheet that you can use to drive offers. And in fact, since I mentioned it here, I'll give it to you briefly here, but I can't do full tours in this short time. So now what happens with shopping is you're going to take them on a tour of homes, and eventually you're going to find one that they really like. And they're going to be pretty nervous about it and really excited about it. And this is where you're going to have to be able to talk about money with them. So often we rely on the lender, and no offense to lenders out there, they can be fantastic, but in my experience, they're not all fantastic. And they don't all do what you can do, which is have real, hard, honest conversations with your buyers. So you absolutely need a lender. They need to tell them what they're qualified for. They need to tell them what their payments would be. But there's work you can do with that lender to be able to talk more confidently about the money. And you've got to be able to do that. Because if you can't talk about money, that is the biggest box that's in a purchase offer contract. So if you can't talk about sales price, if you can't help them understand how much money they're going to have to put down, then you can't even fill out this contract. So you as the agent during this phase needs to be prepared and attempt to talk about money, even if you're not comfortable. And what they need to be doing is looking for eights. So here's the tool for getting them to make an offer. And it goes all the way back to the research phase in that buyer consultation. This is one of my favorite lines. I encourage you to use it. And I encourage you to build your own tool around this process. So when we're in the buyer consultation, what I always told buyers is how we're going to know when it's time to make an offer. The way that we're going to know when it's time to make an offer is every time we tour homes, I'm going to bring you a physical rating sheet, a little piece of paper where I write the property address and I ask you on a scale of 1 to 10 to rate this home and how it fits your needs. And after every home, before we go into the next one, you're going to actually rate it for me. And then you're going to tell me why you rated it, what you rated it. And anytime you rate something a 5 or below, I'll never bring you back to another place like that on any tour. I'm sorry, we missed. I brought you to the wrong house. Anytime you rate something a 6 or 7, we're going to stop and talk about it. I want to know what you liked. I want to know what you didn't like. And I want to ask you a question of what would need to be added or removed to this home to make it an 8 or 9. And that's really important because then you really learn the psyche of how the client thinks or the prospective client thinks. You're going to learn if they have a spouse, what they talk about, who cares about what. You're going to learn their likes and dislikes. And what I tell them is, but guess what we're looking for? We're looking for 8s or 9s, but there's not a lot of 9s out there. And there are never any 10s. I make a joke that my wife and I built our home and it's still not a 10. We found things we completely forgot. We wished we had done instead. So it was a 9 when we moved in. But we're looking for 8s because 8s can be made into 9s. And when we find an 8, when you rate something an 8, we're going to make an offer. I tell them that during the buyer consultation. So they're not surprised. They're not confused. They're not unsure when we're going to make an offer. They know when we find an 8. And then I've established myself as someone who's on their side and not against them, because we're not going to offer on 6s and 7s. We're looking for 8s. And what's really crazy and cool about, again, how people make decisions emotionally and then rationalize using logic is they're going to start to make 7s into 8s after some time. They're going to be, you know what? All we got to do is build a deck back there and we'd have everything else we wanted. This just needs a fire pit. You know what? We could redo the study and this could absolutely be my home office. They're going to start working on figuring out how to make things 8s because they're going to be looking for 8s. During this buying phase, you're reminding them, we're looking for 8s. We're looking for 8s. If you're ever not sure, like, should they make an offer? Is it an 8? That's it. And what's cool when you get in this conversation is they'll go back and forth over and over again, trying to say, well, this was, she said this is an 8, and I really think this is a 7. What do you think, Curtis? And then I go back to all the previous ones. Well, you really didn't like that, you know, it wasn't backed up to a green belt. So, well, you know what? That doesn't matter. Actually, the only reason I cared about the green belt was because I wanted to do this and this and that. And this neighborhood has that. Then you start turning them into really a true partner in here. And then what you do together in the buying phase is make offers. Again, if you're not making offers, they're just shopping. They're not serious. They're not buying. They're not ready. So you got to break the ice and get them in the habit of making offers. These are your 3 phases. We can go into a little more detail, but here's what I believe for all of you. When you adopt this winning buyer mindset and you have this simple formula, you don't need a lot more information. You just need to go try this. Oh, Curtis, I've never had a buyer consultation. Go set one today. Just try it. You know what, Curtis? I'm out there shopping with people that don't have a pre-qualification letter. Call them today and say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I was on a coaching call this morning and somebody reminded me that we actually don't have your pre-qualification letter. So I know you said you talked to that lender. Can we re-engage with them? Can I give them a follow-up call and get them to call you today? So you go ahead and go through with that credit application and see if we can get you pre-qualified, right? You've got someone who's been buying and kicking, you think they've been buying and kicking tires for a really long time. Hey, I learned something today. I'm curious if you try it with me. Next time we go on our tour of homes, I'm going to bring a little rating sheet, and I want to get you guys in the habit of rating homes so we can figure out what you really like and what you don't like.